NHTV and the Hamden North Haven League of Women Voters present the 2018 Candidates Forum. The two candidates for 87th District State Representative are Republican incumbent Dave Yaccarino and Democratic challenger Teresa Ranciato-Vili. Volunteers from the League of Women Voters sponsor candidates forums in order to provide voters with the information they need to make intelligent decisions on Election Day.
On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Hamden North Haven, I welcome you to a debate between North Haven candidates for a seat in the Connecticut House of Representatives. Seated in alphabetical order are Teresa Ranciato-Vili and David Yaccarino. They sit in the company of flowers because we want to show our appreciation to them for their willingness to work on our behalf, on behalf of the town, and on behalf of the state. And the flowers are theirs to keep. A number of you know how the League operates debates, and others need to have a sort of a review of the rules. The questions come from you. So if you want to ask a question, raise your hand, and somebody will come by with an index card and a pencil. So, and when you're finished writing the question, raise your hand, and somebody will come to pick up your question. The questions go to reviewers who help the moderator. They group the questions by topic, rewrite what is illegible, and so on. They also will set aside any questions having to do with national or federal issues, because we really want to focus on our town and our state. The timekeepers will keep the time. Each candidate has 2 minutes to answer the question. Both of them will answer the same question. And then, if they want to respond or rebut, they get another minute to do so, and sometimes even 30 seconds extra. But the question, there are some timekeepers in the front, and they will be keeping the time, and they will be, and a sign manager will raise up a sign showing the candidates when they have a minute left, and also when they have 30 seconds left, and when they have to stop. And then they really do have to stop. The debate is being taped by NHTV and will be aired up to elections on NHTV.com, Comcast Cable Channel 20 and 1084, and Frontier Vantage TV Channel 6053. We have asked the candidates that there would be no personal attacks. However, pointing out flaws and inaccuracies is obviously perfectly fine. And one last note. This is a debate about issues. It is not a rally. So, people who come to support the candidates by showing their emotions, by applauding or cheering or booing and so on, that's for a rally. This is a debate. So we will be able to applaud at the very end when the candidates give their closing statements. Each of them will have an opening statement and a closing statement. And at the beginning, some of you may forget and show your enthusiasm and your emotions, but the moderator will remind you of the rules. So now I introduce to you the moderator, Elise Lowe, from the League of Women Voters of the East Shore.
Thank you all. Are you ready to begin?
Yes.
Is this on? Okay. The order of first and second has already been determined. Mr. Yaccarino goes first, your opening statement, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for being here this evening. First, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters, North Haven TV, the audience, the wonderful people of North Haven, and my opponent. I am humbled and honored to be the state representative of the town of North Haven for the last 8 years. It's a town I grew up in. It's a town I raised my children in, my 3 children, and the town I've owned in business for the last 27 years, and my family's owned a business here for 50 years. I spent 4 years in the United States Navy Reserve. I've been an active volunteer in this community through scouting, through Max Anyway baseball, coaching girls softball, youth group mentoring, and soup kitchens for many, many years. This all helped me bring a work ethic and a dedication to our town. Over the last nearly 40 years, the Democratic-controlled legislature the Democrats have controlled the state legislature. But in 2016, the Senate Republicans tied 18-18, and the House numbers shrunk. With that, we passed 2 historic bipartisan budgets, not raising taxes, fully funding education, fully funding municipal aid, fully funding road aid, and more importantly, fully funding Medicare savings for people of need and seniors. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud to work together, both Democrats and Republicans, and we proved we could do it. I've been ranking member of the Commerce Committee for the last 2 years. Prior to that, veterans for 5 years. With the bioscience, we passed the most historic bioscience bill ever in our state that will lead to a greater economy, jobs for our families, for working people, and small businesses. I'm proud to support healthcare issues for women and pre-existing conditions, pay equity, and for equal pay, equal work. And more importantly, I'm proud to represent people of North Haven. I've always put people first, and I will always put people first. And I'm proud to sit in this building where a couple years ago we had lost funding, and we went back and put bipartisan legislation in, but it was Len and I, Senator Fasano and I, that worked on notwithstanding language with Commissioner Curry, and we ended up getting $31 million, not 24, and I'm proud of that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Please hold your applause until the very end of this debate. Thank you. Ms. Ranciano-Villi.
Thank you. So some of you in the audience know me and some of you do not. I'm proud to be here. I'm happy to be here. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, and thank you to Dave. Dave and I have known each other for a long time, as have many of us who have lived in North Haven all our lives. My family has been here since 1904, farming family, and very proud to come from the faraway section of Monowese. I did go to North Haven High School. I left North Haven. I attended University of Colorado in Boulder. It was a great opportunity for me. I learned a lot about spending time in another part of the country. Came back. I married John Veely, who is also from North Haven. We had 1 son, Jack. He's no longer with us. He died when he was 10. He had leukemia. We can talk more about that when we talk about healthcare, but healthcare is my one major priority. I do know that my opponent has supported some health care bills, and I'm proud of that, and I applaud him. I'm very worried about what's going to happen with health care under the possibility of the Republican gubernatorial candidate that he supports, so we'll get into that later. I do own my own business. Part of it is working with the wireless companies, all of the major companies I consult. I also own a company that consults with disaster recovery. When Superstorm Sandy hit, I was tagged by somebody else who everybody knows in the town. I won't give his name. But the Red Cross asked me to come in and help write grants. I did that. Then I was asked to help run the one and only long-term recovery group for the state. I did that. I'm proud to say that I was the primary author of the long-term recovery guide that is just going into print for the state of Connecticut. I worked very closely with them. Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security, as well as the Department of Housing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First question to Mr. Iacarino. If elected, what will your first piece of legislation be next year?
Well, that's a good question. The first piece of legislation, to continue to work on the bioscience initiative we had last year and healthcare for people. My opponent mentioned, with the governor coming in, In Connecticut, just so everybody knows in this room, we passed in statute that healthcare, any pre-existing conditions, the 10 essential benefits for women or for people in general are covered in Connecticut. It's in statute. It's not going anywhere. And if Mr. Stefanowski is going to be elected, everything we vote on is through the legislature, not the governor. The governor or the president can only have executive orders. We have that in statute, and there's no desire for the legislature, both Republican and Democrat, to repeal that. I think it's vitally important. So my first piece of legislation would be continue on the science we worked on last year, which helps healthcare, delivery of healthcare, rare diseases, and helps people in general. And also, I'm a member of the Commerce Committee, and blockchain is something that's very important for crypto technology and cybersecurity. We've been working on that this summer, even though we're out of session. There's 4 of us, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and we're working on that. I think it's vitally important for, like I said, cybersecurity. So I'll be working on that. And paid family medical leave. We didn't pass it last year. I did vote against it in committee because it was a poorly drafted bill. There was no way to fund it. There was no appetite on either side, especially the Democrats were not going to push it forth. And that's something we need to work on. We need to have a bipartisan approach that works for everybody. That's really, there's many pieces, things we need to work on, but we really, really need to work together to move our state forward. We've done a lot of great things this year. I still have a little time. We've done a lot of great things this year. We need to continue that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ranciotto-Villi?
Well, the first piece of legislature I would work on would be tolls. I'm sure that a question may come up about tolls, but I'm going to tackle that now. I drive a lot in this state. I drive out of state. My business takes me to Vermont, it takes me to Massachusetts, it takes me to New Hampshire, it takes me to Rhode Island, New York, and New Jersey. Guess what? I'm paying tolls in all of those states. I'm watching trucks and cars coming in and out. We need to fund our roads some way. That's the way to do it. We don't need to worry anymore. I remember when I was a little kid and we'd fight about, which my brother or I would throw the coins and see if we missed the basket, and then we'd get yelled at those old toll booths. Doesn't happen anymore. We need electronic tolling. In July, Rhode Island put tolls in for just trucks, $625,000 in 1 month. We need to fund our roads and our infrastructure. Our roads right now, we base that on a gas tax. Guess what? Good idea, our cars are a lot more efficient. They use less gas. The way of the future is going to be electric cars. What are we going to do about funding then? And businesses who don't want to locate in this state or businesses that are leaving, part of that reason is our infrastructure. Nobody wants to sit in traffic. If you want to go to Stanford right now, if you have to be there 8 in the morning, you have to leave at 5:06. That's 2 hours to be in a car to get through a state that shouldn't take you 1 hour. So yes, I will look at tolls, I will look at electronic tolling, and I will look at not charging people who are over 70 years old, and we would have a different graded system for people who are out of state, who are in state, and that's my first piece of legislation, to bring revenue into a very important part and lockbox it.
Thank you. Additional?
Could I rebut to that? Thank you. I would not put tolls in. Currently, so everybody knows, Connecticut collects $600 million from the federal government for not having tolls. We made this federal agreement over 35 years ago. As far as the trucks pay a fuel tax in our state, even if they don't fill up. Connecticut and every state collects that fuel tax. It's a federal agreement. So it's not a revenue problem. We have the $600 million. We have the second highest fuel tax in the country. We have a gross receipts petroleum tax, and any petroleum product, roofing materials, any materials, we collect that tax as a state. So it's not a revenue problem. We put this year in our bipartisan historic budget $250 million in roads and bridges. The DOT right now is flush to move the next 2 years. We have a 5-year Republican prioritized progress plan that infuses over $500 million besides the $600 million we receive now. That's what we need to do. We have to be dedicated. We're the stewards of your money. It's your money. And it's our obligation to fund roads and bridges. We all want safe roads and bridges. We want that. It's important. We need to do more with the real, but it's prioritizing and being committed to the people you serve. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Flush for 2 years is not enough. It's not enough. You and I drive on these roads. We can always make the deal. Other states around us had the same deal with the federal government. We can put tolls. We did have tolls, and that's part of the deal. Connecticut did have tolls. You can go back to that. I have studied that exact topic. The fuel tax, it's all not cutting it. And we need to also look past roads, because if we lockbox money from tolls for infrastructure, we can actually start looking at other types of transportation. So Connecticut cannot keep losing businesses to states that have much better public transportation options than we do. That's the way it is. It can't be that only Connecticut doesn't know something that all the other states do and are collecting money and have better roads and safer bridges and tunnels. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, and Mrs. Ranciata-Villi first. What measures will you support that will help solve the state's seemingly perennial budget shortfalls, and who or what entities or programs will they affect the most?
Well, first of all, let me just say we have a great state that is on its way to recovery. Doom and gloom will not really cut it. Dave and I both attended a breakfast this morning where the economy was discussed, and we were the last state in this area to go into recession, and yes, we are the last state to come out. Manufacturing is up. We are making great strides. However, yes, we do need to do something. We need to bring revenue into this state. So what I would do is, like I said, I would put tolls in, I would lockbox that money for infrastructure. I would also legalize recreational marijuana. I would lockbox that money for schools and for opiate treatment. I would increase the minimum wage, and yes, I would approve, as I would have if I were there before, paid family medical leave, because we are losing workforce that are talented and dedicated, and they are going to other states because we don't have those things. And it's not just taxes, but I've looked at what Massachusetts does. Yes, they have different things. They do have a better infrastructure. They have better transportation. I would go to a 5% flat tax. I would cut our income tax now and go to a straight 5% flat tax. I think that would help a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Iaccarino.
Repeat that, please.
All right. What measures will you support that will help solve the state's seemingly perennial budget shortfalls, and who or what entities or programs will they affect the most?
That's a really important question. Currently, we have a $2 billion rainy day surplus, and that's from Republican bipartisan budget with the principles of volatility cap, spending cap, and a bond cap. The volatility cap is when the state income tax numbers come in and they're $3.15 billion. Anything over that, we are obligated by statute now, and we push this since I've been a freshman until now, to take that money and put it in the rainy day fund. The bond cap, under the governor and the majority party, they're bonding nearly $3 billion a year. We cut that down to $1.9 billion, and it's a fairly hard, between 1.9 and 2 billion. Those are the measures you have to do to continue to grow, give faith and hope to our companies. So the volatility cap, the bond cap, the spending cap. But also, my opponent did say something that I've been saying since I've been up in Hartford. In 2011, Connecticut chose, the majority party chose to raise the income tax to 4 levels, as high as 7%. Massachusetts lowered their income tax to 5.1%. They have one rate and one rate only. And that's something we should do. I would look at this past year in our bipartisan budget. If you're a senior and you collect Social Security, you no longer pay income tax on that. And in year 19, if you have a pension under $100,000, you'll pay 14% less on that pension. And it escalates to 28%, 42 and up, until it zeroes out. Those are the things you could do when you budget properly. And in this budget, we did fund education fully. We funded Medicare savings for 161,000 seniors of people of need. When you're prudent, you're honest, and you're responsible, you could do these things. And then what happens is companies have faith in Connecticut, and they want to come here, just like they want to come to North Haven, because we're consistent. We live within our means. And then when you tax less, you could actually do more for people because you have more money to spend because people stay here. We've lost so many wealthy people in the last 8 years for the high taxes. And your party, unfortunately, continually to raise those taxes. We try to lower taxes. So I think I'm out of time, but we need to work together at the end of the day.
Thank you. Further comments?
Yes, please. Dave, I haven't been up there, so you can call it my party, but I haven't had a chance to work with them yet. Another thing that I would look at, because look, we all know about the benefits and the pensions. We need to fund those. There has been an idea out there that I fully embrace, and that would be taking the money from the lottery that somehow got put over into the general fund. Let's take that and let's use it like New Jersey has and other states have done and fund our pensions, because that's actually a revenue fund that we can depend on. It won't do it fully. The other thing I'd look at, and I'm going to go right here and say it, I don't think that a part-time job as a legislator needs a pension and needs insurance. Most part-time jobs don't do that. So I would look at our legislators who went after CBAC and went after all of the employees who work for the state, some of whom were truck drivers making $50,000, and asked them to give back. Let's look at our legislators and say, wait a minute, why are you getting a pension and why are you getting your health care benefits paid? Part-time jobs don't do that.
Thank you.
Could I respond
Further?
to that? Well, how long do I have for this? Because I want to answer the question. Do I have a minute?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, as far as the unfunded liabilities, and this, I'm going to keep going back to this budget because I'm so proud of this budget we passed. We had $100 million surplus. We wanted to, on the Republican side, even though we're still the minority, we got this passed. We wanted to take $33 1/3 million and put it in the state pension for state workers, which they deserve, and they earn that. $33 1/3 million to the teachers' pensions, which they deserve, and they earn that. And the rest in the rainy day fund. The majority party would not do it. They refused to do it. They wanted the money in the rainy day fund. The second part of the question? Oh, the pensions. If you really think this is a part-time job, you have something coming. This is a full-time commitment. I work 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I go to people's house, and I should. Forgive me for saying this. I go everywhere and anywhere to help people. We pay into our pensions. It's statute. You cannot have this job without paying into your pensions. And I don't want to take anything away from CBAC.
Sorry, your time is up. I didn't hear either one of you address the second part of that. Who or what entities or programs will they affect the most? Yes, a minute? Yes.
I start?
You
Okay.
first.
Well, I mean, I think that what I did say about the legalization of marijuana and lockboxing that would allow for schools to get more consistent funding, so education.
Okay.
As far as the tolls, that would allow for our, I guess it would be Department of Transportation to get some much needed funding and for new projects as well. So that's, and then the opioid addiction services would also benefit from the marijuana legalization. Thanks.
Good.
Well, education, we have a real ACS formula. We were tasked by a state Superior Court judge 2 years ago to come up with a formula, a fair formula, and we did that. And I'm proud that we did that. It fully funds North Haven education this year. The formula will give us $3.9 million next year. It's the most we'll ever receive. As far as I could go back, I have to go back to this is not a part-time job. I was a scout leader for years. They said it's 1 hour a week. It's not 1 hour a week. It's a full-time commitment. When you commit to something, you commit to something, 100%. So I didn't do this job for a pension. I didn't do it. We get paid $28,000 a year. As far as the state workers, they work awful hard. Nobody wants to fight with the state worker. I believe in collective bargaining, first of all. But the fact is, it's unsustainable. We wanted to put the $33 million this year. We want to keep putting the excess money from the rainy day fund in the pensions. That's our obligation. We need to fund programs we're supposed to. But under the majority party, so much was cut until we balanced the budget and we moved our state forward by working together.
Thank you.
I'm going to rebut.
We're going to remind the timekeepers and the candidates and the audience that the format calls for a 2-minute first answer, a 1-minute second answer, and a 30-second rebuttal. And then we're going to move on to the next question, because we're going to cover many of the topics that you're bringing into your answers. So we're going to move on to number 3 now, okay? Which is taxes. Do you believe we need to raise or lower taxes to solve our fiscal problem? And what specific taxes would you raise or lower? Mr. Iaccarino first.
I definitely don't think we should raise any taxes. We had the 2 largest tax increases in the history of our state in 2011 and 13. Our revenue numbers shrunk drastically. The majority party cut services for women, for healthcare, for rape crisis centers, intellectual disability folks, education, because we had such a shortfall of revenue. And in 13, the same thing happened again. In 15, it was not as large as tax increase, but it was still a large tax increase. So I definitely would not raise any taxes. Again, when you work together and you do the job you're supposed to do with the volatility spending and bond cap and live within your means and try to grow your economy, the task we're asked, we're elected to do for you, you could do good things. I would lower this, when necessary, I would lower income tax on folks making $100,000 or less. I would like to go, and listen, we will have wishes, but the realistic number would be like 3.5%, 3%, and eventually phase out the income tax for under $100,000. I don't think we could realistically lower the income tax any time within at least the next 2 years. We need to go back next year, balance our budget, and continue these policies we've enacted in the last 2 years. So I don't think we should raise any taxes.
Okay,
I think
thank
we'll
you.
just scare too many companies away.
Ms. Ranciano-Vili.
I think we're in agreement here. I would not raise any taxes either. But I do believe we need to bring revenue in order to keep our taxes where they are and to be able to lower that tax to a 5 or 5.5 flat tax rate. Look, Massachusetts has a corporate rate that's pretty much equal to ours. Our sales taxes are about the same. So we really need to figure out what's going wrong here. I haven't been up there. Mr. Iaccarino has, but he can't have it both ways. You can't blame the Democrats for part of the budget and then take kudos for the other part of the budget. I know you say that you're like to work together, but you vote pretty much 93 or 94% along that party line. So and trust me, as a Democrat in North Haven, hey, if you don't work across the aisle, you don't have an aisle. I mean, you have to work across the aisle. I would do that as well. I give him credit for saying that he works with other people, but to get back to the taxes, no new taxes.
Any further?
I've made it clear all the evening, I've made it clear that it's best to work together. I'm proud that we had 2 bipartisan budgets. I'm proud of the work we do in Hartford. Some of my best friends and the best things we do are bipartisan. I don't know what my voting record is, but I vote for what's best for the town of North Haven. And most of the time, it is with the Republican Party. But those same Republican votes, Democrats are voting for those votes. That's the honest answer. The big difference is up until 2016, the honest answer is until the majority party needed us, because our state was going in the abyss, they worked together with us. They had no other choice. We went 2017, our session ended in June. We didn't have a budget. We had 7 budgets, Republican budgets. We didn't have a budget until October. The majority party never had a budget.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Ranciano-Vili. Any further?
Absolutely not.
Would you lower any taxes? You wouldn't raise any. Would you lower any taxes? No, Ms. Ranciano-Vili.
Yes, I think I already said that I would lower.
Okay.
Yes.
Move on to the next question. Ms. Ranciano-Vili first. How can we increase revenue in this state without burdening working and middle-class people?
This is a softball. I've already answered that. I did say that I would bring tolls into the state of Connecticut. That would bring revenue in. We're looking at perhaps $30 million. Okay, I'm sorry, no, $30 million is what we're looking at for legalizing marijuana, recreational. There's a reason I would do that. I don't know if that question's going to be asked, but that would bring in much needed revenue. Told you before, tolls are very important. That would bring in revenue. I would like to see if the 5.5% flat tax would bring in any other businesses. My guess is that it would. So those are my 2 major ideas to bring in revenue. Thank you.
Mr. Iaccarino? Thank
you for that question. My interpretation of revenue was pro-growth and jobs, high sustainable jobs. I was ranking member of Commerce. We passed, like I said, the most historic bipartisan bioscience initiative in our state. I always say Connecticut could do better. We have Yale University, we have the Greater New Haven area, Semaphore, it's a bioscience research facility, Mount Sinai, Southern, University of New Haven. We could compete with Massachusetts. 8 years ago, Massachusetts invested $10 billion between private equity, that's what I'm doing here, state assistance, which we've done too much of that here though, and academia. And the bill we passed last year is going to grow jobs. There's already companies coming here because they know what we're doing as far as the income tax deduction for $50 million to $100 million investments. Advanced manufacturing. To me, growth are jobs. We've taxed enough. We need to grow our economy. We have one of the strongest economies in our country until 1991. We could do it again. We have to work together. We have to promote high-paying, sustainable jobs so people can make a living and raise families. Thank you.
Thank you. Further?
I agree. I think what my opponent doesn't recognize is that when I say to legalize recreational marijuana, that brings an enormous amount of business into our state. That means you open stores. That means you have people who work in those stores. It also matters that we grow jobs in our manufacturing base. And I do agree with my opponent on that front, but we do need to look a little more closely at who's training these people, and we need to attract businesses who will do on-the-job training.
Any further, Mr. Iaccarino?
No, so I go sometimes to Southern and speak to materials and manufacturing. It's coordinating colleges, state colleges with community colleges and high schools. And I think when I speak to them, I'd go further. I'd go to the middle schools. When you want to learn something, by the time you're in high school, if you want to be in the manufacturing or carpenter or plumber, you really want to learn that or get the feel of it when you're in 7th and 8th grade. So by the time you're in high school, you could apply this to your academic education and also your practical trade experience. Thank you, sorry. So I think it's continually that pipeline, which we passed this year.
Okay. The next question, somebody is concerned about bringing high-paying jobs back to the state. Do you have any plans for that? Mr. Iaccarino.
That goes to, thank you. It's an excellent question and it's an important question. That goes to the bioscience, it goes to the blockchain. Blockchain is a crypto technology. There's a few states, like Delaware is using it now for absentee ballots for veterans, if you're only in wartime zones. It's an amazing technology. I never heard of it 10 months ago, 11 months ago. We're working on that. We passed it last year, and hopefully if I'm back, or whoever's back, that we want to push this for, we want to be a leader in the country in blockchain technology. They're high paying jobs. But back to the sciences. You could go to a semaphore or Mount Sinai. You don't have to be a molecular biologist. You don't have to be a scientist. You could be a research tech. You could be have computer knowledge. You could be a plumber. They need plumber. When you build these facilities, you need union work. You need non-union work. You have to build. I had to fight the last night of session to get this bioscience bill passed because some people thought it was for the rich. It's for high-paying, sustainable jobs that so many people from Connecticut leave and go to Massachusetts for these jobs. Then they come back here. We have to think outside of the box, and I think this is something we should have done years ago. I'm a big fan of Palo Alto. It's the corridor of technology back 50 years ago. It's all through real competition, not government assistance, companies competing with each other. And when you compete with each other, you foster better ideas, you foster high-paying jobs, and you could leave one company, go to the next company. That's why Massachusetts is growing so much, because there's opportunity for young people, for families, for old people, for everything. And then when you have that income, you could pay Medicare savings permanently. You could pay for education. You could help the needy. And then you could help them get a job where they don't need government assistance. It's always a team effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rancière-Villey.
I wish that my opponent and some of the people in Connecticut started looking at Massachusetts a few years ago instead of just bringing it up now. He's correct. He is correct. We need to bring in more high-paying jobs. But in order to do that, you know what you need? You need a prepared workforce. And that means a professional workforce. And yes, we do have them. We have great colleges here. But if you go and talk to the people at Yale or at Quinnipiac, they're going to tell you, you know what their people are looking at? They want to have paid family medical leave. So when they raise their families or have their parents here, they have time off to help them and they can get paid for that. That's important to them. They want to have roads that they can actually drive on without being stuck in traffic. So we need to look at some very basic things that go along with bringing in high-paying jobs, because those people who want high-paying jobs want to have some damn good transportation options. That's why most of the younger people I know move out. Some of these kids don't even have licenses. I rent houses to Yale students. About half of them don't want a license. They don't want to drive.
Thank you. Mr. Iaccarino,
So-
any further?
Like I said, as your state representative, I go to Hartford, I work, I have a 100% voting record, but I take the time to look how we can move our state forward. I've been talking about the sciences in Massachusetts since I've got elected. Unfortunately, the majority party kept pushing back on me. I love Martin Looney, Senator Looney. We have a great working relationship. And I would say to Martin, we need more sciences. We need more, do more in New Haven. No, we have plenty of science. And as soon as this started taking hold 2 years ago, what happened? Lo and behold, everybody got on board, which is a good thing. But it wasn't for a lack of trying. It was a lack of people felt nobody thought out of the box. And I've always thought out of the box. I have a business that's so unorthodox, but I'm very proud of it. I sell books. So it's thinking outside of the box and doing what's right by people. Thank you.
Thank you. Further?
I think we also need to look at wind and solar. I do know that our solar program now in the state is changing and not for the better. Massachusetts has boosted theirs up. We have not. I do agree again that we need to look at the sciences. Science is great. I have a hard time believing that the majority party did not agree that science was a good thing. But you know, if I do get elected, I will be part of that majority party and maybe they'll listen to me a little bit more.
Thank you. That leads into the next question for Ms. Ranciata-Vili first. Will you support legislation to increase sustainable energy that's good for the environment, economy, and job growth?
Absolutely. Part of my business is working with the cellular companies, okay? I work closely with people who also look at solar. We need to increase our solar. Right here, we're sitting in North Haven. We actually took advantage of the solar program for some of our schools. We need to do more of that. It's also a great manufacturing business. So yes, we need to look at how we bring more solar and more wind production into our state, because states around us are taking advantage of wind power. One of the other things we need to look at is, why is Tesla not allowed here? Let's bring Tesla in here as well. Let's start looking at why we don't have more options for electric cars. So for all of those higher end energy saving and energy increasing businesses, yes, they're great manufacturers, bring them on into our state, but we have to be welcoming to them. Again, that's why I'm looking at cutting taxes.
Thank you. Mr. Iaccarino.
I've supported solar and all alternative energy since I've been your state representative. Connecticut has a goal of 20% renewables by 2020, and that's solar. Not so much wind. Wind is really inefficient in Connecticut. It's efficient in Massachusetts and other places. It's fuel cell technology. Connecticut is a leader in the country in fuel cell technology. And when I first got elected, we worked on it a little, but finally last year in our comprehensive energy policy, and was really overwhelmingly bipartisan, we put fuel cell technology in there, more emphasis on solar, more emphasis on Millstone, believe it or not. Millstone, like it or not, there's 40% of our energy. If we ever eliminated Millstone, we would lose 40%, or your bills would go up between 30 and 40%. I don't remember, there's so many questions, I forget the rest of the part of the question.
Sustainable energy increasing and good for the environment, economy, and job growth.
Of course it is for the environment. The more renewables, hydro technology, Hydro-Quebec, I mean, that's the most, it's our oldest form of energy. Sorry, I'm out of time.
I want to make sure that the timekeepers are correct, that each candidate gets 2 minutes for their first answer. Their second answer gets 1 minute. And their third retort, if they have one, is a 30-second. Okay. I think you were cut off short.
Yeah, I was.
You get another minute.
Well, I support renewables. You need that balance, obviously. We only have one Earth. One of my favorite presidents, Theodore Roosevelt, who protected millions and millions of acres of land, of some national monuments and national land. So yeah, we need that, but you really need the balance of both. I was saying Hydro-Quebec, the legislature, you have to compete with other states. We try to get the second transmission line in, and every time we try to get that second line, there's always pushback from people in the environment. And I understand that, but you can't have, you have to have a compromise. We need that second line of transmission. So between solar, expansion, renewables of fuel cell technology, back to Tesla. Tesla, I actually voted against Tesla. I think it's a great company. They do not want to play by the rules. We have many car dealers in North Haven, Connecticut that pay thousands and thousands, if not millions of dollars in taxes, that are civically minded. They should not be undermined by Tesla. Tesla should play by the rules.
Okay, thank you. More further comments?
Well, we just need to think out of the box, like you said. So Tesla is a new, very unique, innovative project. So to allow Tesla into our state, I think would be a good idea. And when we're talking about renewables, I also need to talk about transportation. Because again, we need to start looking at better ways to look at renewable energy for transportation. So that's something that I would like to work across the aisles and get somebody in here who has done that. We have to also take advantage of a lot of our universities, like Dave said. They have ideas. Let's figure out how we fix our transportation and start using some of those renewables like the battery cells. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Iacarino?
We definitely need, like the rails. I supported the Hartford to Springfield rail. That's 80% federal funds and the rest state funds. I did support that. I went and took the ride on it, and I think it's a great thing. And I'd love to expand rail in Connecticut. The honest answer is we are a very narrow state, if you think about it. We have narrow highways. So we do need to do our infrastructure, but it's hard to tell people how they should live their life. So if people want to drive, they're going to drive. So we need to fix our roads, we need to fix our bridges, and we do need to expand the rail, but it's going to come at, do we do it this year or next year, but we do have to do it. That's why we have a 5-year prioritized progress transportation program for the Republican budget. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question deals with the 2 ballot questions for November 6th. The first one having to do with the transportation lockbox, and the second one requiring a public hearing and more transparency for the sale or transfer of public lands. Do you support either or both of these ballot questions? Mr. Iacarino?
No.
I support the lockbox. The problem with the lockbox, though,
Yes.
Am I going?
Yes.
Problem with we call it the paper tiger in Hartford. It's not really a secure lockbox. It's lockbox in name only. But if people vote for that's great. But the fact is, it's got to be sealed, ironclad. Legislators or governors can't take that money and siphon it out for anything but transportation. The other one was the land.
Transparency on public hearings before
I
land
believe in all
transfer.
transparency for public hearings.
Okay.
Again, we agree. I do agree with the lockbox. We need to have it. Otherwise, it just keeps getting raided by the general fund. And as far as transparency, absolutely.
Any further? Okay. The next question, and Ms. Ranciata-Villi first. Connecticut has suffered from several major weather incidents. What will you do to address the issue of climate change, assistance for storm recovery, and future development along the shorelines and waterways in light of these storms?
So the first question, or the first part, was climate change. Well, I think that talking about renewable energy, making sure that whatever comes onto our highways and transportation options are renewable and are sustainable, that's part of it. Let's try to keep up. Connecticut's been pretty well versed in the climate change area as far as their regulations. Let's keep our regulations in place. That's important. As far as climate change, this is up my alley. I worked with Superstorm Sandy. When it came to disaster recovery, our state was woefully unprepared. They are better prepared now. Part of my training and my education is in policy and planning. So I can tell you a lot about the shoreline. I can tell you where we shouldn't be redeveloping, but I can also tell you that unless we have plans in place, when towns and cities are hit by disaster, they're going to be looking for their tax base to be put back in place and quickly. We can't do that anymore. So part of what I prepared for the state for disaster recovery is to have towns and cities be much more prepared and look at what development they want and what development they don't want, and where they can develop once a storm hits and once their neighborhoods get destroyed. So they need to be able, for instance, to look at Milford that has parts of it now that looks like a fishing village because they have houses on the ground, they have houses that are 18 feet up in the air. If they were to plan next time, they would know where those residents could be placed. They wouldn't have to rebuild where they are. They could have rebuilt in a different section. They could have that already prepared.
Thank you. Mr. Yacarino?
Thank you. I believe in climate change or the warming of the earth. As far as storm preparedness, we have the Connecticut Homeland Security, and we have our partners in Washington, federal partners. So we have a plan. There's plans now if there was a disaster between the federal management and the state management, and we just continue that continued dialogue and planning. And that's what it comes down to, is planning. And you can't predict when the storm's going to come, but you could predict how you're going to address it, how you're going to approach it, and how you're going to help the residents. So it's planning, working with our federal partners, working with the Department of Homeland Security of Connecticut, and the Coast Guard and the stakeholders. It really comes down to planning. And I do believe, though, we've had a lot of abnormal storms in the last 10 years. Part of it, it's just, the waters, the ocean is, and the sound is warmed. When you have that, you have high tides, you have unstable weather.
Any further?
Yeah, I just wanted to address, we have a very, very flimsy recovery plan with the federal government and with Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security. We have a better one now that I helped prepare. But I can tell you, and after we've seen storms here, and with the crumbling foundations as well, which, I do know that you voted against assistance there. FEMA is not coming in to help us. Anybody who has insurance might get some rental assistance if your house is totally destroyed. Otherwise, you're not getting help from FEMA if you have insurance. We need to depend on ourselves. We need to have regional recovery plans. We need to have much more preparation. Shout out to North Haven for having a CERT team, but we need to do much more to prepare because those storms are coming and they're getting bigger.
Every town has an emergency evacuation plan and a plan in coordination with the Connecticut Homeland Security. And as many things I fault our governor for, in these storms, he did a very good job. So with our National Guard. So I don't agree with you there at all. As far as the crumbling foundations, what I did vote against is to tax every homeowner in the state of Connecticut, everybody that has insurance, on your bill, $12, and another administrative fee of $3 to the insurance companies, $15. So you're going to look at your bill, you're all going to pay $15 more for your insurance. I didn't think that was fair. What I do think is fair, the insurance company should cover that. That is their responsibility. That's why we have homeowners insurance. They are skirting the issue. It's their responsibility. You pay homeowners insurance, they should have covered that, along with the contractor. The contractor's long gone. But I was not going to burden everybody with a $15 payment just to look good. That's the wrong way to legislate. That's why our Connecticut was in a mess for so many years.
Another 30 seconds.
Another 30 seconds, thank you. Those people, just like people in North Haven, suffered something that was no fault of their own. By not voting to assist them, you voted to allow the insurance companies to get absolutely off the hook, and those people got no assistance. And I will tell you that recovery from Superstorm Sandy was not state-based. Recovery from Superstorm Sandy was primarily faith-based and nonprofits, with some help from HUD.
I'm very sympathetic and empathetic. But the fact is, even that $15 an hour is not going to pay for these crumbling foundations. Unfortunately, I have friends that live up there. And we spoke about it, they understood. That is not going, that's a Band-Aid. There's too often in government and politics, people want to do things to look good and put a Band-Aid on it. The fact of the matter is, the insurance companies are liable, and if I know Mr. Stefanowski said if he was elected, he's going to go after the insurance companies. They should have done this. With all due respect to our governor, the Commissioner of Insurance is their friend. That should have never happened. They should have covered it.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question. Mr. Yacarino first. North Haven residents have been asking for a common sense paid earned family and medical leave policy for years. What will you do to ensure this bill will finally pass?
Well, I'm sure most of the crowd knows. In committee, not in the House, not in the Senate, I'm in the House. I voted against the bill last year. We had two bills, a Republican version, it was more tax credit based, which I voted for. And then another version that came to us I'm on the bonding subcommittee, on many committees. The bonding subcommittee does all bonding. We're cognizant of all bonding for the state. We never saw the bill. The day of finance, it was a couple days before, about 2 weeks before session ended, comes in front of me. There's $20 million bonding. I asked some questions in the committee. Why is it in bonding when we didn't have the bonding? We didn't take this up in bonding. And the Democratic chair, Pat Miller, said, I agree with Representative Iaccarino. We can't push this bill forward with this language. We already finished our bonding subcommittee. So I brought a motion forward to appropriate the money through appropriation. So you change the language. You do it all the time. You put forth an amendment. You ask for the amendment. And the Speaker of the House came down and said, no, we don't have to do that. We're just going to send it to Appropriations Friday. And there's no way I could have voted for that. I believe in paid family medical leave. It was disingenuous to the people that want it. It was a ploy. So I didn't vote for it. What happened that Friday, it never got called by the democratically controlled Appropriations Committee. Never called the bill. The bill never got called in the Senate. The bill never got called in the House. That afternoon, one of the Democratic leaders came up to me and said, why are you asking so many questions? We're never calling this bill. It's not attainable this year. And I said, that's wrong. That is wrong to do that to people. So for the rest of the session, I worked with the working families, the stakeholders to try to move this bill forward. I couldn't get either leadership, Democrat or Republican, to push this bill forward. I am committed, not in the form it was, there's got to be some changes because the towns and the states that have it have an umbrella of the states run the unemployment, not the businesses. So it's a big difference. I mean, you look at legislation, you have to be responsible for taxpayers, you have to be responsible for people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm not up there, so I understand most of what Mr. Iaccarino just talked about, but as far as the paid family medical leave bill, I know that it was going to be employee funded. I know that the state would have had it bonded for, I believe, 1 year. They would have been paid back. There is no way that we can compete with other states to bring in an educated, skilled workforce if people do not have paid family medical leave. It's also not fair to people in North Haven because, just like my opponent, I've walked this town and I keep walking it. There are many, many seniors out there who are not healthy and they're married and one partner has to go to work and not be able to have the ability to stay home and care for that person. We've all had it. I had a cousin I cared for with cancer. I was lucky that I had the ability financially to be able to help her because she had nobody else. So while I understand that maybe there were some complications, I don't understand why it took only up until 2 weeks before the end of the session for this to come here. I don't understand why it didn't happen earlier. I haven't been there 8 years, my opponent has. I would have had this done and I would have worked, I guess with my side if they were still a majority, but I would have worked with his side. If you want to have a good workforce and if you want to actually have compassion for people, then you need to understand that when somebody's ill, you need to be able to take time off and not have to worry about paying your mortgage. So I know a lot of times people think, well, it's about young people who need to have children and take the pregnancy off. A lot of times that's covered. The other things are not. I had to stay home for months and months with my son when he was ill. Again, I was lucky enough that my husband and I were able to handle that financially. What exactly do you expect people to do who have terminally ill people at home?
Thank you.
I'll make it clear again. I do support, in the proper form, paid family medical leave. The bill came to us right before session ended because there was never any intent by the Democratic Party to move this bill forward. That's the honest answer. Unfortunately, that happens in politics. Second of all, they never called it in the Senate. They never called it in appropriations, never called it in the House. Third of all, it was a cost, besides the $20 million, it's $25 million a year to administer. In the bill, it had 4 employees. And I said, there's no way this could be right. It's actually Scott Jackson, he was a commissioner of labor, now commissioner of revenue. I spoke to Scott at length on this. I want to move this forward. He said, David, just be aware, this is a Cadillac plan. Massachusetts, the other states that have it, if you make $500 a week, you could only get $500 a week. And under this plan, if you made $500 a week, you get $1,000 a week. And the other states have a state umbrella policy for unemployment. Connecticut is based by the employers. They would have to pay the difference. Again, I've committed to the stakeholders up in Hartford and the people of North Haven. I'm willing to work on this, but it's got to be done bipartisanly. It's got to be sustainable. And Anthem Blue Cross and many companies are giving it now on their own paid. Thank you.
That's true. There are a lot of companies that are doing it, but you know what? There's a lot of companies who are not, and those people who live in North Haven who work for those companies should not be penalized or should not be forced to move to other states that will help better provide for them. And if it's not the bill that I want, I'll make it the bill that I want. I don't think that we need to be waiting for other people to tell us how to put our bills together. I mean, if you have your mindset on this is what's important, yes, I understand you have to work with other people, but that's what we need to move our state forward, not excuses about, well, the other guys didn't want to push it forward, so I couldn't get it done. I will get it done. And if I was there for 8 years, I would get it done.
Thank you. Next question. What could you do to help the elderly with their health care? Mrs. Ranciata-Villi.
Right now, Connecticut, as David said, has some very good protections in there for the elderly. I'm worried about them staying there. I understand that if Bob Stefanowski were to become governor, I don't believe anything is going to be sacred. I mean, right now we do have attorney generals from other states working on being able to take protections away. There's no reason for me to think that he wouldn't direct his attorney general to do the same thing. We need to protect Medicare. We need to protect it actually we might need to expand that. We need to look at the elderly and we need to look all around us because let me just say, I bet you almost everybody here has a pre-existing condition. I'm worried about them being able to touch that. I know that the gubernatorial candidate who my opponent supports stated that he doesn't think that the Affordable Health Care Act helped anybody. Well, he's wrong because there's a lot of people in our state who it's helped. There's a lot of people in North Haven who it's helped. So we need to just say no to any cuts to any Medicare or any senior health care benefits that now exist in our state. We need to protect them. We need to be able to stand up very strongly and just say, no, you're not going to touch those. I'll be able to do that. I don't have any allegiances to anybody in Hartford. And when I say that, I can say that about the Democratic Party as well as the Republican Party. My only allegiance is to people from our town. It's always been like that.
Thank you. Very important question, very important subject. The governor, we had Medicare savings for many years in Connecticut. We have the most, one of the best plans for the donut hole between the federal plan and the state plan. And what it does is, if you're under a certain income, you get prescriptions covered and your office visits covered, minimal or sometimes zero. There was a mistake in the budget a year and a half ago, and that was cut. And I knew right away. I went to AARP. I said, why didn't you guys complain about this? They felt there was no problem with it. We went back and fixed it. I realized it because I have a store. A lot of people come see me, and they feel comfortable to come to me. So we went back and fixed it. The governor, Malloy, vetoed it. And we went back and permanently put it in statute. Now every legislature has to fund it every year. So it's making sure Medicare savings is permanently funded. We passed the prescription, the majority party and the governor wanted to tax non-prescription drugs for seniors. We stopped that. So it's protecting those issues. Constantly having the Medicare savings in plan. Make sure non-prescription drugs for seniors are covered. Keeping taxes lower. We passed a circuit breaker program for renters for seniors, so they will not pay, they'll get a tax rebate. I'd like to see a freeze for tax for seniors, but that's something usually to municipal level. As far as Mr. Stefanowski, I do know him well. He grew up in North Haven, and I'm clear with him on many issues. And one thing is pre-existing conditions and pre-existing, the ACA, if that was repealed. We have that in statute. And again, the governor can't change that. It's up to the legislature. And there's no Democrat or Republican that I know that wants to change that. So I don't think you should be bashing Mr. Stefanowski. He said clearly in the debate, he's going to keep it codified. He has no intention of changing it. And if he did, he'd get pushback, and he's not going to. So we need to protect our seniors. They've given so much to us. It's our turn to protect them.
Further comment?
I do understand that the legislature is the one who changes things, and the governor cannot. But I would worry that if we have a Republican governor who wants to change those things, and we have a representative that votes 93 or 94% of the time, party line, that you may be willing to change this, or you would be pressured from your party to do so. And I do understand where Mr. Stefanowski is coming from, and I also understand that he does not believe in the same programs that you're just talking about now. I do, and I thank you for helping to protect our seniors. I would want to make sure that stays the same way, whether you're there or I'm there.
I have to be honest, I feel like I'm in Washington right now with unnecessary rhetoric against Mr. Stefanowski, and the Republicans for that matter. I'm a Republican, I'm a North Haven at first. I voted for the most strictest gun law in the state of Connecticut. I had death threats. I had to call the police. I had to call the Capitol Police. I take offense that you tell me I just vote party line. I voted for the pregnancy bill. I stood on the floor of the House and proudly supported the bill for pregnant women that needed health care. So I take offense to that. I represent the people of North Haven. When I was a freshman, I voted for the health care advocate. I was the only Republican in insurance to vote for that bill. I had lobbyists chasing after me. I thought you were a Republican. I said, no, I am a North Haven resident and an American first. When I first ran for office, I went to my leader at the time, Larry Cafaro, before I ran. I said, Larry, I'm going to tell you now, I'm an easygoing guy, but what is best for North Haven, I am voting for. And I have done that since. So I take offense to that. This is North Haven, Connecticut. I always put North Haven, the people first, and I have a Democratic campaign manager, a Democratic treasurer. I take offense to that. I'm sorry.
Thank you. 30 seconds.
Thank you. I'm sorry you think you're in Washington. We are in North Haven, and where we live in North Haven, we are a mixed bag here. We have Democrats, we have Republicans, and we have a lot of unaffiliated people. So your record as far as voting 93% along party lines is a matter of fact. So I'm sorry that you take offense to that, but that is a matter of fact. And thank you for your vote on the gun laws, but I'm going to go back again. You are the one who keeps talking about the Democratic majority and the governor, so you can't have it both ways.
Thank you. Next question. The Office of Legislative Management released a report that found rampant sexual harassment in Hartford. I assume they mean at the Capitol. With the failure of the Time's Up bill in the House last year, how do you plan on combating this culture, both in workplaces and at the Capitol?
There's no place for that in the Capitol and schools or anywhere. And unfortunately, it happens too often. And it's happened probably too often at the Capitol. I supported the TRO bill, temporary restraining order for women. I supported any domestic violence bill aimed at protecting women. I will always protect the rights of women, and they deserve that. It's a culture, unfortunately, and it's not acceptable. It should not be acceptable any longer in our country. Ms.
Ranciano-Villi.
Along with my opponent, I also support all of those bills. I support stronger workplace harassment laws, but they're not just for women. We also need them for the LGBTQ community. There's a lot of harassment that goes on a pretty constant basis, and it's very quiet, it's very understated, and it's mean, and there's no place for it in our state. So I would support probably a stronger bill about workforce and workplace harassment.
Any further? Okay. Next question. On gun control, what is your position on gun control? Would you support a ban or a restriction on semi-automatic weapons?
Absolutely, without question. I'm proud of our legislature that we have some very strong gun laws. We need to keep them that way. I'm hoping that my opponent doesn't think he's in Washington again, but I'm going to say that Mr. Stefanowski has about a 63 or 5% rating from the NRA, and his running mate Markley has a 100% rating. I worry about that. I worry about it because while he can tell me what the governor does or doesn't do, I worry about having that kind of culture. And let me just say something about what happens when you have an automatic weapon. You can have the best protection in the world. We have some very good police officers. We're here in North Haven. We just put SROs in our schools. That's good. Somebody comes in with a semi-automatic weapon, if they get into those schools, our police officer doesn't have a chance. Or maybe he has one chance. So no. And you know, let me tell you a story. I have a car. It's a really fast car. I like driving fast. I can't drive the way I want to on these roads. I can't endanger your life. So for people who say, well, I really want to fire one of those guns, guess what? Go rent it. Go to a range. Go where you can use one. Have at it. Don't even think about having it in your home. And by the way, I don't understand why people can buy armor-piercing bullets. I just don't want to see those. I think we have a regulation. We just need to look at this very common sense-wise. We cannot afford not only to not lose one more child, we cannot afford to lose one more person. There's no place for semi-automatic or automatic weapons. They're a weapon of war. They're not for hunting. They're not for anything else. Thank you.
Where I did support one of the strictest gun laws in the country a few years ago, there was many reasons for it. Part was Mossberg, part was there was good pieces in it and bad pieces in it. What we don't do good in this country and in our state is actually enforce those laws. Part of the provision of the bill, I think it was 5 years ago, there's straw sellers and straw buyers. They are people that, if I'm legal and my daughter is illegal and I'd buy the gun legally in my name and I sell it to her for like $100. And that's why Chicago has so many shootings. That was supposed to be part of the bill where there'd be strong prosecution. There's no prosecution, unfortunately. That's something, and we're supposed to be millions of dollars for gangs. As far as, we banned automatics already, and you can't sell armor-piercing bullets. But do you understand, a semi-automatic, most guns or pistols are semi-automatic. You're saying you want to ban everything, basically, except for a musket and maybe a single-barrel shotgun. I think that's a direct violation of our Second Amendment. And I think you have to be careful when you go down that road. There are many responsible people that most people that own guns and go through the process are law-abiding citizens that earn that right. It is a right, I think, under the Second Amendment. In the D.C. Heller case in 2008, when Justice Scalia looked at, that's one of the reasons I did vote for the bill, the government has the right to regulate or restrict firearms, but you cannot ban any class of gun. You can't ban all pistols, you can't ban all rifles. So I think I don't know if you understand that. By saying you're going to ban all semi-automatic, you're banning pretty much everything, except for a musket and a single-barrel shotgun. And I don't think that's going to happen. I think there are a lot of law-abiding citizens that have that right.
I agree, there are a lot of law-abiding citizens who have that right. However, there's a really lot of law-abiding citizens who have the right not to be shot. So anything that could be used as a semi-automatic, yes, I agree, we need to ban it. I haven't heard the word musket for a long time, I think since 8th grade and Johnny Tremaine. I'm not looking to take away rifles, hunting rifles. I don't see the need for any other types of guns, I'll be honest with you. Hunting is very important. I have a lot of friends who hunt. But I also know right in our town, we have somebody here who lost their grandson at Sandy Hook. There has to be a rational, common sense explanation besides it's a right to own a gun. Yes, you can own that gun. It can be a hunting rifle. It can be a shotgun. That's what I want you to have. I won't back off on that because I know what it's like to lose somebody like that. Thank you.
I respect that. First of all, I was with that person that lost their grandson for many months during that tragic time. And I met with many families. So I'm very conscious of that. I did support the bill. But the fact is, all rifles, pretty much all are semi-automatic. Most hunting rifles are semi-automatic. So I don't know, they'll be banned. That's all I'm saying. I don't think that's the way to go. I think we need to enforce our laws. I think we need to give our police officers as many tools as possible to protect us. We don't put enough money in mental health. It's tragic. In the last 20 or 30 years, both parties have failed as far as mental health facilities, treatment, observation. SROs, I sit on the School Safety Security Board Council. and I met with our chief before the vote for the town. I think it's important, but you have to have that communication between law enforcement, but it's enforcing laws, mental health, and that's it. Thank you.
I agree with that. I don't get to sit on all of these boards and commissions, but I do go to a lot of these meetings, and I meet with a lot of these people too. And shame on our state for the cuts to mental health. Because yes, enforcement is very important. I wasn't at the Capitol for 8 years while we cut all of the mental health budgets. So I want to get up there and I want to fix some of that stuff. But I will tell you, yes, I support enforcement. We need to have mental health built up.
Another 30 seconds.
Real quick. I hate to be partisan, but it was the Democratic Party that cut all this money. They've had control of the legislature for nearly 40 years. And one of the reasons I ran 8 years ago, the supermajority for either party was dangerous to democracy. There was 114 Democrats in 2008 to 37 Republicans. Governor Rell couldn't do a thing. The fact of the matter is, and I don't mean to say this, but it was the Democratic Party that made these cuts to shelters, to mental health, intellectual disability caucuses. Until we got our budgets solved this year, we were able to fund more of it.
Okay.
That's the honest answer.
Thank you. Next question, Mr. Yacarino first. Do you support net neutrality? Why or why not?
I support, protecting the consumer. We never got, I know my opponent wrote an article saying I voted against that. I never saw the bill last year, never came to the House. I don't think it ever got called in the Senate. I used to serve in energy technology. I don't serve in that committee any longer. But I support any provisions that can protect the consumer for internet use, and so I do support it.
I did write an article, and I don't believe I said you didn't vote on it. What I did say is that the Republicans did not support the net neutrality bill. We can go back and look at that. There is a very important factor in net neutrality. Okay, I don't know if everyone understands what net neutrality is. That means that your internet companies can decide to make you pay more money or less money depending on what you want to be seeing. And the Republicans, as far as I recall, were trying to protect those companies. And I will tell you, after working for a lot of those communications companies, they don't need our protection up in Hartford. What the consumers need is to be able to download and get information on a fair, even basis, regardless of what kind of information they are looking to get. And we've had issues out in California where when they had wildfires and they were trying to actually get some communications going, they were slowed down by Verizon because they had the ability to slow those people down for on an emergency basis. They actually had to finally put it back. But I do believe in net neutrality. The person who brought net neutrality to the forefront is a 93-year-old woman in North Haven. She's a former teacher, and she asked me to look into that. And I was shocked to see that. Why would any legislature decide not to support net neutrality? But I do know it did not come to a vote.
I'm not in the Senate. I do remember discussion of that, and it wasn't on party lines. It was some Democratic senators were against it too. It was a very poorly drafted bill. Legislation is, the language is key to everything, and it's the way you craft it. And the reason it didn't get called, what I'm hearing is both parties couldn't push it forward because it was a poorly drafted bill. But I support net neutrality, I support consumers, and I support transparency, and I support telecommunications for people at a fair cost.
And I just want to say that I don't really care what party does or doesn't want it. And I really mean that because, again, being a Democrat in this town, but I do think it's really funny what you said earlier about you don't think that a supermajority is a good thing. Don't say that in North Haven because I think that the other side has had a supermajority for a long time. I just want to make it clear that, again, I do not care what party wants what. I will not care when I get to Hartford. I only care about what's good, first for North Haven, second for our region, and third for the state.
Thank you. Next question. As of January 2018, 34 states plus the District of Columbia permit some form of no excuse early voting, and 3 additional states conduct elections exclusively by mail. What would you do to enable maximum participation of eligible voters in Connecticut's elections? Ms. Ranciata-Villi first.
I do believe in early voting. I think early voting is important for several different reasons. I think that it gets more people into the voting booths. I think that's what the evidence shows. As far as mail-in voting, again, it's important. I mean, our country has changed a lot since, the first Constitutional Congress. So anything that gets more people out to vote, that makes it easier to vote, I would support those measures. I do not support same-day voting, and I've had several discussions with people about that, because I don't think you can actually go in and same-day registration and vote. That puts too much pressure, I think, on our registrars, unless there's a different way to do that.
Thank you.
I actually don't support early voting, but I would like to see Election Day a national holiday. I think that way you would get everybody out to vote. Early voting, there's absentee balloting. I think it's our right to vote, but I really would like to see a national holiday on municipal and state elections. The states that have early voting, there's been a lot of problems, to be honest with you. So it sounds good, but it's your right to go vote. We have every opportunity. If you know you can't make it, we have the absentee ballots, and many people use absentee ballots. So it's a burden on our registrars, it's a burden on the municipalities financially, but regardless of that, if we had a national holiday, because schools are closed, a lot of places turn out to vote, I would have a national holiday. That's my view, before I had early voting.
I do like the idea of a national holiday. I just think that we all in this audience know that not every business is going to close. Not every, Starbucks is still certainly going to be open. The difference between absentee voting and early voting, it's a very fine line, because people do use absentee voting to vote early if they know that they really cannot have time to get over to the polls that day, whether they're away or not.
So if you know you're going to work, you could absentee now. If you work at Starbucks, the polls open 6 in the morning to late in the evening. Again, we want everybody to vote. We want 100% participation. It's our right, and we should do that. That's why I'd like to see a national holiday.
And we hope all of you will vote. But now it's time for the closing statements from our two candidates. And we'll ask Mr. Iaccarino to go first. 2 minutes, please.
Well, this is really wonderful. I'd like to thank you, the audience, the League of Women Voters, like I said earlier, my opponent, the people of North Haven. It's been such an honor to represent North Haven. Like I said earlier, it's emotional for me. I'm very humbled to be a state representative for the town I grew up in. And I'm proud to work together in Hartford for the people of Connecticut. I'm proud of the historic bipartisan budgets. I'm proud of funding Medicare savings. I'm proud of pushing people, moving us forward as a state. But it takes effort and it takes commitment. And when I go door to door, people, we'll talk about things. How did you get to this point? And it's principles at work. And I want to continue those principles. We're not like Washington. We're Connecticut. And both Democrats and Republicans work amazingly well. Some of my best friends in Hartford are Democrats. Caroline Simmons, Jack Hennessy. We served in veterans together for 5 years. Great friends. I saw my friend Lou Esposito today that serves up there. When I was a freshman, he came up to me and he knew my father really well. And you build bonds and you build trust. And I've built that trust in Hartford. And I'm proud of that. And it takes just the commitment to the people of North Haven. So we could all say anything, but the fact is I have a proven record. I fight for women's issues. I fight for pay equity. I fight for keep pre-existing conditions in statute. And for people in general, that's our job as legislators. I'm a big believer in our founding fathers. The theory of this country is amazing, but it comes to all those men back then and now in women that were helping them in the background. Today it's men and women. We're charged to work for you. We're the stewards of your money, of our policies. And I have that record, and I would hope you consider me in November. I'd like to thank everybody again, and I love this town of North Haven, the town I grew up in. My daughter, I love you. Shouldn't have said that. I love you very much, and I'm looking forward to meeting people in the next 10 days, and thank you all, and God bless. Thank you.
Ms. Ranciata-Villi. No, hold on, please. One more.
Thank you to Mr. Iaccarino. This has been a great opportunity. Nope, I have not been in Hartford. But you know where I've been? I've been in this town for over 20 years. Commitment? I have been committed to Zoning Board of Appeals, Planning and Zoning Commission, your Blight Commission, moderating your town meetings, running bone marrow drives so people can find matches, our Rotary Club that works tirelessly for this town. I can go on with big brothers, big sisters. Look, I am absolutely 120% committed to North Haven. You should know that. My background, my education, my training with, are we? Closing time? Okay. My background has trained me for this job, okay? I have a degree in public policy. But more than that, look, I want the opportunity to go and represent you up in Hartford. I listened, I learned a lot. I sit here on boards every month. You sit there, you ask me for something. I have the ability and I have no problem saying yes or no, depending on whether it's a good idea for our town. I can go up to Hartford and I can do that for our state as well. I appreciate that there are political differences. I didn't get as far as I have and work as closely with people on boards and commissions in our town by not understanding how to work across the aisle, and I mean that. A lot of our decisions on planning and zoning, you know what? Pretty much they're made, sometimes there's a one vote, but most of the time we all get to work together. And as far as my commitment, I know that my opponent shares that as well.
Thank you very much. And now we can really applaud. Maybe we'll vote both of them in. How's that? We get double the representation. Thank you so much for coming, and I hope you enjoyed this wonderful debate, and you will be able to watch it again on NHTV. And as you exit, you will find 3 tables, one of the League of Women Voters information, and for both campaigns. So take a look at those. Thank you.